This is Asaf Rosenzheim, and we are here at Profimex Strategy Talks. And today we are joined by mi'ץ Pscovar, or Moshe, or Michael, or Misha.
I have many names. Yes,
have
my
many names.
Russian name, Jewish name, and my American name.
You're
correct.
one of the founders of Trion Properties, Trion from the United States. And I'd love to hear how you came up with the word Trion.
Sure, I'll tell you about Trion. It's actually a funny story. Max and I, my business partner, have known each other for years, and we're both real estate brokers. I was doing loans at a company called HFF. He was selling properties at Marcus Millichap. And when we finally decided we wanted to leave our companies and form our new company, we didn't have a name. And eventually we signed the lease. The landlord said, "What's the name of the company?" We don't know. And within a few days, he goes, "Look, I have to put a sign up on the door and downstairs. I need an answer by the end of the day." And we basically figured out the name Trion. I went to USC. The school name is Trojan. Max went to Loyola. The school name is Lion. You combine the two names, you get Trion Properties.
Amazing.
Which actually, in hindsight, 20 years ago now, you think about it, it's a great name. It's like easy, catchy, so we call it, Trion Properties.
Tell me a little bit about the experience of being a company managed and owned by two people. You guys have worked together for a long time. You have a very close relationship, but it's different. It's different than having a large company with several partners or a public company. What's the dynamic like?
I think it's great. It's Max and I are best friends and business partners. I think that both of us have been blessed in that sense that you get to work every day. You have a partner that you can trust financially, make decisions. If you're not there, you think alike. So it's been a great journey. We see eye to eye on many things, and we also disagree on things. And I think it brings up a great relationship where you can actually sit down together, talk about difference of opinions, but in the long run, you're seeing eye to eye. So we've made so many decisions that help grow the company. And like you said, over the years, we've grown in, corporate in LA. I think we have, 24 people at the height. We're a little bit lower now. And then in Miami, we have about 10. But if you factor in everybody that works under the Trion umbrella at the properties, it's a little bit, probably 150. And, we kind of feel the company is really like our family. We've known people that worked with us for over 10 years. We've seen people, get married, have kids. Little kids come to the office on scooters. I've had my little kids, and then 5, 6, 7 years later, then your son comes. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, he's grown up," because everyone's seen it over the years.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the dynamic that we have in our office, and I think it's great.
Cool. You guys moved from the West Coast to the East Coast to Florida. What made you make that decision?
I'd say two reasons. One is, personally, I lived in Los Angeles my whole life, and LA is still home for me. I love it. My family's there, my friends. I went to school out there, but to be honest, I was ready for a change, and I wanted to go somewhere similar climate to LA. And every time I would go to Miami, my wife and I were both like, would say to each other, "This is great. I wish we lived here. I wish we lived here." And then I told her, I go, "Look, this is right after COVID. We always love Miami. Let's finally try it out. What's the worst thing that can happen?" And I remember telling my mom, we're moving to Miami, and she's like, "Oh," like any Jewish mom, "How can you leave me? You're going to leave the family, you're going to leave your brother, but eventually I told her, like, "Look, you guys left back in the days.
Yeah.
You immigrated from Russia, you came to Israel, then you moved to Europe. People move, it's okay." We were ready for a change. And at the same time, our business evolved because we were a West Coast company buying West Coast properties. And as you know, California being a blue state, there were so many regulations happening about rent control, and you started reading press about what was happening in New York, and they passed a vacancy control, which in California, you had a law that if you bought any property built before 1979, it was automatically rent control. Anything afterwards was non-rent control. And then this law passed in New York that basically eliminated that, and they said, even if you get units that become vacant, we are going to limit the rent based on whatever bureau you're in the 5 boroughs in New York, but in LA, whatever county you'd be in. And I was worried that eventually this might get on our ballot and might get some approval from different renters and boards, and eventually it started coming on the ballot. So we started looking at other states to diversify. Obviously, we're invested in 7 different states, and we were already in the Pacific Northwest. In Portland, we were in Denver and Colorado, and we started looking in Florida and Carolina and Georgia. And it became very difficult to really understand the dynamics in the Southeast markets, because if you were going to see a property, you would take a red eye, you would land, you would go see the property, and you would try to understand the rent comps, the sale comps, and you're trying to do everything in a day or two. But as you know, a big factor of our business is real estate, is location and the dynamics. And to really understand these markets, you have to spend some time in the market. You can't just go for 24 hours and say, this is the area that's going to be great, right? So it became a challenge for us. So we decided to open a Miami office. Max moved first. I stayed in LA to kind of finalize everything. We made one of our guys that used to run acquisitions for us, Farhan, a partner in LA, and then I moved to Miami. So Max moved 3.5 years ago, and I moved 2.5 years ago.
It sounds like you have a really good sense for opportunities. What do you think the opportunities are right now? It's been a difficult 2 years. We haven't seen a lot of transactions come through. And for guys like you and Max, I'm sure it's a big struggle because you're used to doing 7, 8, 9, 10 deals a year. And you've only done how many each year for the last 2 years?
2, yeah.
2, yeah. So it's very slow. There's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines, a lot of dry capital, dry powder waiting for transactions. Where do you think this is going?
I mean, look, it feels like to me we're at the bottom of the market right now. I feel like prices have come down to the point where if you're going to put chips on the table, it's time to move in, right? I think it's convincing investors that should I put my money back into real estate, because the last 2-3 years have been tough. And as any investor looks at it, they're wondering, look at the stock market. Look how well the stock market has done. The S&P, the Dow, NASDAQ, and it's liquid. I can take my money out anytime I want, right? Here in real estate, we all know it's a long-term game, right? So it's a slow process convincing people to start taking money out of equities and back into real estate. But I think everybody understands the sector that we're in, multifamily. People need a place to live, and in the long run, it's going to do great. And we've seen cycles numerous times. Even, I'm 47. I've seen like 2 or 3 big cycles, not as many as other people, but eventually the market will come back. And we're starting to see that now. I think rents have come down because of inflation, delinquencies have gone up, and certain expenses as insurance went up 3-4 times. And now all of it is starting to normalize a little bit. So I think right now, if you're able to find a few deals and finance them correctly and put fixed rate debt, no more floating rate debt, and finance it to achieve your business plan, it's a great time to get back into the market.
Some economics are talking about soft landing or a crisis. I wonder for you, are you thinking these opportunities are going to be around for 6, 12, 18 months, or is this kind of like a small window that you have to capture with attractive deals, and then maybe we're going to go back to higher prices?
Look, I think the big unknown in the room is our interest rates, right? Long-term interest rates, 10-year fixed, which is based on the 10-year treasury. So I think that if bonds, which they have in the last few weeks, have gone down almost 50 basis points, keep going down, you're going to see prices go back up pretty quickly here. If long-term rates stay where they are, I think the market's going to be in this, window for the next 12 to 18 months, right? It's going to be the new norm. I think that a lot of owners that have bought properties in the last 3-4 years and put bridge financing on have held out as long as possible, and I think their investors are not willing to cut checks. So there's going to come a point where the market needs to flush out these deals, and there's only so many of these deals. So I think there's going to be opportunities. We're seeing them right now, and I think in a few years it's going to be a head scratcher, and you're going to say to yourself, I wish I bought more, but there's a lot of unknowns.
Which brings me to the next question. In this kind of environment, let's say I'm already convinced, okay? You convince me, I want to invest in real estate, I
Okay.
want to invest in multifamily. What are some of the advantages and what makes Trion unique compared to their competitors?
Sure. What makes Trion unique compared to our competitors? Well, I think I'll start off by number one saying we're vertically integrated. I think that's a big advantage. When we started out initially, we used to outsource management, and we never got the attention we thought we should from a manager. And talking to my peers in the business, it seems like the big boys, guys that own over 15, 20,000 units in different markets, they're getting the A team from big third party managers. So if they hire Greystar, for example, if you own 20,000 units, they're going to give you their best managers.
Yeah.
But if you own a building, one building in a market, and maybe you own 500, 600 units and you hire someone like them, you're not getting the A team. So having in-house management where you're basically going week by week and trying to understand trends, what's happening, delinquency, rents, how much can I push rents, should I back off, should I give a concession, whatever I have to do, I think is a big advantage. Having it in-house. And not a lot of people have that. We also have our own construction management group. So anytime we're going out doing renovations, we're obviously going through making sure the scope is done. We have two people, one on the West Coast, Max Sanchez and Simon Leonoff is on the East Coast. And they're basically flying out once a week to all the properties, meeting our subs, our GCs, and making sure the work that needs to get done is getting done, you know? And I think a lot of time when you don't have these people overseeing it, you have delays, cost overruns, and you don't have boots on the ground, right? They'll tell you that. And number three is we have regional managers. And in each market, for example, in the Pacific Northwest, we own a number of deals in Beaverton all around, and we have one regional that basically focuses on Oregon. And she goes out to all the properties and talks to all the managers, making sure that their goals and budgets that we've created for them are being met. So I don't think you get that, I guess, TLC, tender love and care, that I would call it, if you don't have your own management department.
Over the years, you've always bought multifamily, and it always was around kind of this value add strategy. But if you look at the specific assets, there's a little bit of change over time. What type of properties are you looking at right now?
I mean, look, the properties that we're looking at right now always have some kind of value add component. We're really not a core buyer that's going to buy for a core fund and put long-term debt on. So what we've always looked at is value add. What we're trying to stay away from are older buildings. We've bought 1960s, 1970s product in the past because it did have a lot of value add. Rents were below market, and we thought if we spent enough money, we could increase rents and achieve our business plan, which is true. The problem is sometimes you don't know what's under the hood of these buildings once, unless you open the wall.
Yeah.
And these buildings over time, the mechanical, plumbing, a lot of stuff that you don't really think about just evaporates. It just doesn't work anymore. And it costs a lot of money to fix these issues. So we're still trying to find value add, but for 80s product, for 90s products, for 2000 products. So maybe you don't try to underwrite a 23, 24 IRR, 22 IRR, but you buy something that is an 18, but you're buying a better quality asset that you don't have an unknown, like all of a sudden you have a $3 million plumbing issue that might happen.
We spoke a little bit about interest rates and the unknown around it. One of the things that makes the multifamily industry different is the agency debt. Can you speak a little bit about what's agency debt when it comes to housing in the States, and how does that take an important role in this in this sector of investing?
Sure. So agency debt is really important in the multifamily space because it gives liquidity to buyers and sellers on the multifamily side. There's a group, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They're the two big agency lenders. We also have HUD that provide long-term fixed rate debt. Both agencies are required to provide roughly $65-70 billion a year of originations on multifamily assets. And it could be multifamily that is 100% affordable. It could be multifamily that's brand new with zero affordability. And they get priced differently. The more affordable you have, based on AMI levels, the better spread, the lower the rate they give you. But they're pretty competitive because they need to put out 60, 70 billion a year. And if you really think about it, that's a huge advantage being in this product type. Right now, if you were an office buyer right now, and you keep on reading about so many office buyers in New York and other parts of the country that are having a tough time, there is no liquidity for them because there really are no lenders that want to provide financing for office. And even we're not an office, but I do get phone calls from brokers, and they call you telling you, hey, this building in New York was 1,000 square foot. You could buy it for $200 a square foot. It's a mitzvah. You have to buy it, right? Like it's a great deal. You're buying it for 80% off. And then when you get to it and you look at it, you're like, well, if the building's 40 million now, who's going to finance it? And he goes, that's the problem.
Yeah.
There is no agency lender out there. There is no lender that has been set up that has to provide liquidity for this product type. So all of a sudden now you have to go and find private financing. And instead of borrowing at 5 or 6% like you could for multifamily, you're paying people 12, 13, 14%. So that building's not worth $40 or $200 a square foot now, it's worth $100 a foot. So there's so many different variables. So I think being in the multifamily space and having this liquidity from Fannie and Freddie is a huge advantage.
And what type of debt do you guys usually use?
We mostly use 5 or 7 year fixed rate debt from Freddie or Fannie. The benefit with that is you're fixed for 5 or 7 years. The only issue that you have borrowing from a fixed rate lender is what we call the prepayment penalty. And it's not an issue if you're going to hold long term, but it kind of prevents you from selling the asset before the fixed rate period. So if you buy a property, let's say, and you put 7 year fixed rate loan, you can't really sell the property after 2 or 3 years. You're going to have a very high prepayment penalty. But the advantage is Freddie and Fannie understood this, and they said, what can we do for borrowers to let them take advantage of the fixed rates? But at the same time, if they don't want to hold for 7 years, they can sell. And what they did is they decided, we'll basically increase the spread. So instead of your rate being 5.8, maybe you pay 6%. But in the last 2 years of the 7 year period, we'll let you sell the property for a 1% fee. And it gives you flexibility. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put long-term debt with some kind of flexibility.
You've been a broker, you've been a buyer, you've been a seller. So I think you have a really good perspective on why it's so important when you're buying a property to have the capital already on hand. So we know the seller is going to ask, okay, how are you going to finance this property or this purchase? And if you say something like, well, I'm going to have to find financing, and I'm talking about the equity at this point, find financing, then they might pass on you. But if you have the capital available, you have a great advantage. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I thought this question when you were asking me about, you have so many deals, you have so many investors. What have you found, during inspections and stuff where people were nervous or anything like that? But to be honest with you, having a partner and partners lined up ahead of time is a huge advantage. I think when you're trying to buy properties nowadays, especially sellers that have to sell because the loan is maturing, there's a date they have to transact. I think the number one fear for a seller is to go under contract with a buyer that doesn't have his equity lined up. And if you think about it, it's not all about the best price, right? If I was a seller and you're selling a property for $30 million, would you rather sell a property for $29,700,000 for a group that has their equity lined up? Or do you want to risk an additional $300,000 or 4 or 5, depending on what the premium is, to find somebody that has to go and syndicate the equity? So on a lot of buyer interview calls with the brokers, initially up front, a lot of people are asking the question, who is your equity? Have they seen the deal? Have they toured the deal? Have you shown them the numbers? There's a lot of questions that people are asking. So a lot of our times, our equity investors, if we have a large investor we know that's going to be interested, we get them involved early on. We send them our underwriting, and we'll ask them to tour the property with us. It makes us look better, it makes the seller feel better, and it makes the broker feel better because he knows your equity partner has been there, toured, there's no surprises.
So continuing on that string, you've come all the way to Israel to meet with some of the investors introduced by Profimex. Why is it important for you to do business with Profimex? You have a lot of other sources of equity investors.
Yeah, I mean, listen, why is it important for us to come to Israel and to meet with Profimex? Profimex is great. We love the way you guys think about deals. You guys obviously have invested in different multi-classes with industrial and multifamily with other operators. But our goal early on is to not have thousands and thousands of investors. We really are trying to find strategically 2 or 3 investors that we can really grow with and do a number of deals. It's tough enough to go out and find deals and really find value add deals that work and kind of get all the process in place. And we were lucky enough to meet Profimex and the team, and we realized early on that we see eye to eye on a lot of deals. And we love sending you deals because it's an extra eye in terms of underwriting and how we're thinking about deals. And it's great because if you're thinking about deals the same way, you realize that as long as the deals fit this bucket and this box, and they're going to check these check marks, that Profimex is going to be in because they're looking for the same type of deals. So that's really been the goal with you.
I thought you were going to say that you do that because you want to come to Israel once a year and have great food and enjoy the beach, but this is an acceptable answer as well.
I do want to do all those things.
Okay.
Trust me. I love the food here. I love the beach here. But I do come to Israel all the time as well with my wife. My wife loves coming to Israel as well. She likes staying on the beach. I like staying a little bit closer into town.
Fair enough. How old are your kids?
I have 3 kids, 11, 8, and 2.
Would you want them to be in real estate when they grow up?
I would. I would definitely would want them to be in real estate. I guess the right answer is if I want my kids to be in real estate, if they love it. I think that the most important thing to focus on, at least the way I see it with kids, is to have them find something that they really enjoy doing. You know, I talk to so many young professionals who are coming out of school and they're always asking me, what should I do? What do I do? Like, what is the right path? And I say, well, what do you want to do? And they answer, I think I want to be an attorney, or I want to be a business owner. I definitely know what my mom wants me to be, an attorney or a doctor, right? Like any Jewish mom would want. That's what they wanted me to be as well, a dentist. But I think the most important thing to do is something that you enjoy, because then you could really grow and build something. I'm fortunate in the sense that I wake up every day and it doesn't feel like a job for me where I'm going to work. I'm like, oh my God, I have to go to work and do this. It kind of makes me excited to go to work because you're working on something that you love. And I think that's the best thing to do.
So you're pretty passionate about real estate, but if you were not a real estate professional, what do you think your career would have been?
If I wasn't a real estate professional, I would probably have gone into finance, definitely into stocks or bonds. I even remember before going into real estate, I was always reading the Wall Street Journal, reading about stocks and bonds and different funds. It was interesting to me. So before going to real estate, I was debating maybe going to New York and getting an internship at Goldman Sachs or one of the big iBanks.
So over 20 years in real estate, I'm sure you've seen some crazy stuff. Any story comes to mind?
Have I seen any crazy stuff over 20 years in real estate? Absolutely. I've definitely seen my fair share. I can tell you a few stories. Obviously, buying properties, you're always going out to the property doing inspections before you buy the property. And a lot of times, you know, you're seeing 10, 20 units, and you'll see different tenants, from young tenants to older tenants. So I'll tell you a few crazy stories. I remember one time walking into a unit, and one of the tenants had a naked photograph of his wife and himself right there in the living room.
Okay.
And the wife was there. So, and it was a little kind of strange, but I said, "Hi, how are you?" And looking at the photograph at the same time.
Did you end up buying the property?
No, we didn't buy the property.
I understand
We didn't buy the
why.
property.
Yeah.
Another time I walked in and somebody was smoking marijuana. I was with the lender. He was kind enough to say, "Would you like to join me?" I said, "No, we don't want to join you." But I've also seen, people that, believe it or not, have been in units for 30 years. And I can't even explain to you how much junk people store away. And I've seen newspapers from the floor all the way up. I mean, for the last 20 years, wouldn't throw them away. So you're kind of going through a maze to get to the units. I remember one time in LA a long time ago, I was with Max and we walked into a building in Boyle Heights. And Max kind of like warned me. He's like, this building's kind of abandoned. We don't know really what's going on. And I'm kind of like walking through. And, I'm pretty tall, so I'm kind of going through the doors. And you see, cockroaches and insects everywhere. I'm like, okay, just try and be careful. And then all of a sudden, like 20 pigeons start flying over my head. I start screaming because they're right on my head. I wasn't expecting that.
It's like a Hitchcock movie.
Totally. And Max is standing there laughing, and I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, we're out. I'm like, get me out of this building immediately. So I've seen some good ones and some bad ones.
I think it's a good reminder that at the end of the day, we look at it as a transaction, and the lender is just looking at it as risk. But there's people living there, and there's real stories. Some, as you said, some people have lived in these buildings for a very long time. And if we can improve their quality of life, then we've already done something good.
Absolutely.
Very happy you made the right decision and moved into real estate, chose real estate. We get to do business with you, which we're very excited about. And we hope we do a lot of new transactions in the next coming years. We know there's a lot of opportunities coming ahead of us. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for coming all the way to Israel for this interview, and we hope to see you soon again.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and next time, I invite you and Profimex to come to Miami.
Sure.
Instead of coming to Israel.
You've convinced me.
Okay, you got it.